What's up? Welcome to my channel, Bree the Womannequin. I am Bree. So I watch a few different atheist YouTubers on here, and I was just watching a video by Mr. and Mrs. Friendly Ex-Muslim. I watch atheist YouTubers of all different faiths, and I noticed a pattern in their videos, and it's they like to really break down Islam and why Islam doesn't really make sense. Specifically the video that I was watching, they were breaking down the hijab, and Mrs. Friendly Ex-Muslim was talking about how a woman in the video had received a lot of backlash on her decision not to wear the hijab, and was explaining all the negative reasons and things why you shouldn't wear the hijab. But as I'm watching it, I'm thinking none of that stuff matters because it's a part of the religion. The problem is the religion. It's not the hijab. I'm a really big believer of chopping stuff off at the legs. I don't like talking about the symptoms. I like to diagnose the illness. And in my opinion, I'm like, the problem is religion. Religion commands that you follow the rules, and a lot of religions command obedience. It doesn't matter if it doesn't make sense. It doesn't matter if the hijab is hot. It doesn't matter if it makes you look like a potato, which is her words, not mine. That's what the religion dictates. She believes in the religion. So you saying that you should be able to practice Islam without having to wear the hijab doesn't make any sense, because she's already committed to this religion. And I don't know why, but that got me on the pathway to wondering, why did I just stop completely believing in religion? I was talking to one of my friends. This was years ago we had this conversation. He was Christian, and I was telling him I was an atheist now and all that stuff. And this is around the time where I was freshly really committing to being an atheist. And committing is a weird way to put it. I was telling people. It wasn't just in my head, a private belief. It was something that I was actively telling people, I'm an atheist. And he was actually really cool. I was telling him about my doubts and stuff, and how I came to the conclusion that there wasn't a God. And he was like, wow, that's really interesting, because I had those same doubts, but I actually looked for answers within the Bible. I looked for answers within the religion, and it's interesting that you looked for answers outside of the religion. And I've thought about that ever since he said it. This was 10 years ago now, if not longer. And I always wondered, I was like, why did I stop believing in God? Why didn't I religion hop? There's so many people who they don't like their religion, so they just do another one. There are so many people who go from being Christian and then they go to prison and somehow they come out Muslim. I don't know what that's about. If you know what it's about, please tell me in the comment section. I didn't try out anything else. I just went straight to being an atheist. An incredibly brief overview of my religious beliefs is I was raised into a Christian family. My mother's side of the family was Jehovah's Witness, but not very good Jehovah's Witnesses. Apparently my mom followed it a lot more when she was a kid, and she went to the Kingdom Hall and stuff. But they got away from it by the time that I was born, and we became more non-denominational Christian. The church we went to was Methodist when I was growing up, but at some point we just completely stopped going to church. I also have a video on my whole story here or above, or I'll link it down below. When I got to high school, I got back into Christianity. Just personally, I didn't want to go to hell. I was terrified of hell. I told my mom we should go back to church, and from there, I would say high school to early college, I was dedicated to finding the truth and learning about Christianity and more about God and more about religion. I tried several different churches, and I never really felt anything at any of those churches. I never felt anything divine or supernatural. It really felt like every one of those churches was a cult to me. I say that, and I was a Christian at the time. There was no objective truth that people were drawing from. It really just felt like people felt something in here, and because my family had been loosely Christian and I hadn't been as indoctrinated as everybody else, it really felt like that was the reason why I didn't really feel anything. I also was never a person who believed literally in the Bible. I believed that the Bible was a bunch of fables, especially Genesis. And I had a more realistic view of God. I thought that God created the Big Bang. God is the one that set the rules for physics. God was the one that started evolution and created all of that. I didn't necessarily think that humans were special in the sense that if there are other solar systems and other galaxies, I'm like, then there has to be other planets with life, just numerically. Maybe we're not really that special, but I thought we were special in the sense that separate from animals, we were more intelligent and we were made in God's image. And I took made in God's image to not be literal. It was more like the way we think and the way that we had morality and the way that we were able to philosophize and all of those things. I didn't necessarily think that there was a literal God with a body, with hands and eyes and a mouth. I just didn't know why a supernatural being who created the universe would need those things. So I was already believing in a more, in my mind, I say, a less Zeusy type of God, and a more of the type of God that is presented in Futurama. He was an amorphous blob who was really just the idea of a being, and he created us. And it's crazy that I believed that and simultaneously believed that he cared about me masturbating. Eventually I developed, somebody referred to it as a shelf. I can't remember who I first heard it from, and every time you learn something about God or religion that's like incongruous with reality, it adds a little something to your shelf, and eventually your shelf breaks and you become an atheist. That's what happened to me. What stopped me from believing in God was the anthropological reasons for why God didn't exist. But prior to becoming an atheist, to me, Christianity was the one true religion. My religion was the truth. Everything else was just a fantasy. That's how I felt until my mid-20s. I also know some of you think that I'm in my 20s. I'm not. I'm actually an old lady. But I thank you for thinking that. So I pretty much had an anthropological wake-up call. What really got me is I watched an episode of Cosmos where Neil deGrasse Tyson, who I love, basically described the way that humans basically have evolved to believe in God. And remember, I already had a belief that God made evolution. So when Neil deGrasse Tyson said, yeah, evolution is the reason why you believe in God, not the other way around. God didn't make evolution, evolution made God. And he said it, and it just made so much sense. Based off of what I had already learned before, I was always a person that believed in science. I was always intellectually curious. I loved watching the Magic School Bus. I liked Zoom growing up because I was poor. No, I haven't heard anybody else talk about Zoom, but I was on PBS. But I liked Bill Nye the Science Guy. Those were my favorite days in class when my teacher would just put that tape in instead of actually talking at us for however long. So I already loved science. So when science told me that I believed in God because of science, I was like, oh my God, that makes more sense. And basically it solved the problem that I had with God. And the problem was, if God is real, why isn't he revealing himself to all of his children, all humans, the same? Why is he letting different people believe different things? If he genuinely cares about everybody's soul, then he would give his message to everybody. I recently watched a video. It was a mix of people. I think one person was a Hindu. There were some atheists, there were some agnostics, and they were talking to a Christian. They asked a really good question that I always had a problem with, even as a Christian, which was, if God is real, how do you explain the people that don't get God's message? What happens to those people? Do those people go to hell? If I'm a Sentinelese person and I live on this little island where outsiders are not allowed, if I live and die on this island, am I going to hell? And the Christian's response was basically, that's the missionary's fault if these people don't get saved. And I'm like, yeah, so that doesn't solve the problem of the people that are still not getting saved. So the missionary gets to be saved because he believes in God and Jesus, but he didn't make it out to the Sentinelese people, so they're all going to hell. That's a problem that I had when I was a Christian. And just the whole idea of God's trickle-down theory of telling people in one part of the world, and now they got to go be missionaries and tell everybody else, that's not fair. Why do these people get to be automatically saved, but the rest of these people have to wait until these people make it out to them? However many generations that takes. That means however many generations of people have to live and die not even knowing about God or Jesus before these people even make it out there. That's ridiculous. And I just don't think a God who genuinely wanted to save everybody would allow that to happen. It doesn't make any sense why he would do that. I guess it's easy to be a person who already believes in Christianity and think, yeah, that makes sense to me. That's how I was when I was a Christian. I was like, I was born in the right place in the right time. Good thing I wasn't born a Sentinelese person who's never heard of God or Jesus Christ. Good thing I was born in America, where my ancestors were stripped of their original cultures and religions and forced to be Christians. Good thing that happened to them. So I came to start questioning the Bible, and dismantling my belief in the Bible was like the tipping point to dismantling my belief in all religion. Basically, I found out that the Bible had been altered. Really, the Bible was the strongest case for Christianity for me. The fact that the Bible had persisted for so many years really held my faith pretty strong. But when I found out that it had been altered, I was like, whoa, the Bible can be altered. After I learned that it had been altered because it was written by man, I just was like, shit, if the Bible's been altered, then that's a pretty big deal. This isn't just like somebody's altering a work of Shakespeare. I'm supposed to stake my life on this. This is my eternal salvation here. I just didn't trust it anymore, which drew into question the God of the Bible. I've been believing in the God that's in this book, but if I don't trust this book, then that means that the God of this book is now being called into question, right? If you're reading a textbook that's supposed to be completely factual and by a major publisher, by a major author, and you discover some major thing is wrong, it makes you call into question the rest of it, right? You're like, how can I trust any of this? If you were wrong about this thing and you're supposed to be the authority on this, except everything is built to a much larger scale because once again, we're talking about my eternal soul, right? And this is God. God is much bigger than any human that's ever lived. I can't trust him because I can't trust his book. So why did I go from being a Christian to being an atheist? Why did I not explore other religions? Or like my friend, why did I not seek truth to all of my questions within Christianity? First of all, like I said, biggest issue was the Bible. This friend sought more truth inside of the Bible. And I was like, that's the thing that I have the problem with. So why would I go to the Bible to try to help me understand issues that I have with the Bible? You know, like that, it's circular reasoning to me. And I just wasn't feeling that. And why didn't I go to other texts? It was mostly because I realized a lot of these religious texts were built off of each other. I learned that the first was the Torah, right? Torah is the book of Judaism. And then from there, the Bible was created. And then I learned that the Quran was just an offshoot of both of those books. And I'm just like, if this is supposed to be a God that's timeless, he sure is making a lot of amendments to these books that were supposed to also be timeless. If I give you any type of scientific paper, that can be altered forever, right? We're always learning new things about science. We shouldn't be learning new things about God. The first humans that ever existed should have been given the same information about God as we're getting today. God's opinions shouldn't be changing. God's messages should not be changing. That should be things that last forever. After my belief in Christianity was dismantled, I still believed in God. I still believed that there was something or someone watching me. I did not have a good relationship with God in the sense that I felt like he was big brother constantly watching me. I did not like it. I was uncomfortable. I said this in my video before. I liked to touch myself at night, and I knew that God didn't like that. And I had a hard time with it because I was like, I'm not hurting anybody. It's my body. What does it matter if I do this? I'm like, it's relaxing. I enjoy it. I'm not addicted to it. I just had a hard time with those arbitrary rules. I still believed in that God. Even though I didn't believe in Christianity, I still believed that there was somebody watching me, that was protecting me, that I could talk to and have conversations with. I still used to pray. I still used to pray over my food. I prayed over my food even when I was an atheist. It was such a habit that was deeply ingrained in me. It was like a Pascal's wager at that point. I was like, just in case. Pascal's wager is essentially, what if there is a God? What if you're wrong, atheist? What if you get to the end of your life and there was a God? Isn't it better to just live your life as if there is a God, just in case there is one? You don't lose anything. But I don't believe in doing that anymore, just because I have such a strong conviction that there most likely is not a God. Like I said, me and God didn't have a good relationship. I was scared of him. I felt like he was constantly judging me. I felt like he was punishing me if something bad happened to me. I used to thank him when good things happened to me. To me, that was proof that there was a God. The feeling of gratitude that I felt in my heart whenever something good happened to me was, I used to think that was God. Really, that's called relief, right? It's completely independent of God. You lose something and you find it. I used to think that was gratitude, and I used to attribute that to God. God helped me find this. That's why I'm feeling this wave of endorphins right now. But really, that's called relief. You're happy that you found something that you lost. But after I watched that episode of Cosmos, and I realized that humans had the tendency to make up gods. It really broke down all gods, right? It made complete sense that all these different civilizations have all these different gods. If there was a one true God, he would be talking to everybody and telling everybody the exact same thing. Everybody is not being told the exact same thing. Therefore, there is not a one true God. That's just the way I saw it. And then there was so much science to explain away the psychology of why humans create gods, right? That just supported this idea of there not being a God in the first place. First of all, humans are pattern seekers. This was part of the Cosmos episode. Humans recognize patterns in the sky. They recognize patterns in the year, right? We know when the leaves change. We know when the rains come. We know when it snows, when it gets cold, when it gets hot. And humans base our lives off of those patterns, right? Even on a day-to-day basis, we see that this is the time that the sun comes up. This is the time that it sets. This is the pattern that it moves across the sky. We look at the moon and we see the different phases, and we created months based off of those, right? We track days based off of the phases of the moon, right? We're obviously pattern seekers, and that has led us to create a lot of wonderful, great systems, but it's also led us to create a lot of terrible systems, not even regarding religion, right? It's made us do things like using leeches for medicine, a lot of other very toxic medications and belief systems that led us to think this makes sense, right? In the Bible, it says if you mate two cows in front of striped sticks, they will have striped offspring. I don't remember if it's exactly cows, but I know it's something like that. Paraphrasing, okay? That makes sense for humans who are pattern seekers. When I saw that episode of Cosmos and it said that humans are pattern seekers, I just started seeing where humans turn their patterns into religion everywhere. There's so many religions that have their own explanation for the different stars. They create their own constellations. And that lack of consistency and cohesion across the world is definitely what contributed to me being an atheist and thinking if gods exist, obviously there's more than one because they're telling people different things. I feel like I'm trying to keep my hands moving up here in this episode. I'm subconsciously doing it, but I think it's because I realize with my arms down, it just looks like a black blob down here, like a black square. And I'm trying to show you that I actually have form and shape. I feel like I'm close to doing this. And then God said, "Let there be light." Something else that strengthened my disbelief in any type of God was the fact that these religions all borrow off of each other. When I was in art school, I saw a lot of different art pieces, and it was just so cool to see how these different cultures would build off of the cultures that came before. And when I started learning more about different religions, I saw that they were doing the exact same thing. And it's so fascinating to see that. But it's not good when you've staked your life on this thing, right? You're like, okay, wait a minute. Some people don't religion hop. They'll just detach from their religion, but still believe in God, which I'm fine with. I think honestly, out of everything, I like the idea of a person just believing in like some nebulous form of higher power. Like I said, maybe like the Futurama version. I'm fine with people believing in that, because there are no rules to believing in that. I make a lot of Rick and Morty references. But what if it's like Roy? What if I'm just like in some Dave and the Buster's type thing and I have a helmet on and this whole life is just a video game? What if that's the case? And when I die, the helmet comes off. Wouldn't that be so cool? Another issue I had was the unequal opportunity problem. Christianity teaches that Jesus is necessary for salvation, right? And that this life is your one chance to make that decision. But people get wildly different amounts of time and mental capacity in order to make that decision. A 100-year-old man gets 100 years to develop mentally, spiritually. They get 100 years to hear the gospel, to think about it, to meditate on it, to pray on it, and to decide if they want to accept Jesus Christ into their heart. Meanwhile, a baby who dies at 2 years old never even develops the mental capacity to even grasp who Jesus is, who God is, what salvation even means. Someone with severe intellectual disabilities has a similar problem, never having the mental capacity to even grasp the concept of salvation. I have a cousin who has severe autism. She'll never understand Jesus Christ. She'll never be able to pray in any meaningful capacity. So is her soul damned? And if it's not damned, why did God make her in the first place? I also have an issue with the age of accountability, which is when some Christians believe that children will automatically go to heaven. This is not stated in the Bible, so I don't know where they're getting it from. But even if age accountability was a thing, why put a child through suffering and death if they were just going to go to heaven anyway? What's the point of that? Why not just let everybody die before the age of accountability so that we can all go to heaven? But I guess that's a part of free will, except dying is not free will, is it? Nobody wants to die. Unless you commit suicide, nobody's going to choose to die, so that's not free will. A child who is 5 years old dying of leukemia did not make that choice. So what's the point of putting him through that? There are obviously some people who are going to say maybe it's a lesson for the parents. And if God is making a child suffer so that the parents can have a lesson, that's just fucked up, right? If somebody came and stabbed you and they said, it's okay because I'm trying to teach this other person a lesson through stabbing you, how would that make you feel? Would you be like, oh, okay, I'm glad that person gets to learn a lesson. I'm just gonna die slowly as I bleed out over here. All right, I guess my life is over. I'll never get to accomplish my dreams and my family will definitely miss me dearly. But it's all good because that person who gets to live a longer, more fulfilling life than me, then they get to learn a lesson. All right, I'm dead. See, that doesn't make any sense to me. And I just didn't really think it was fair. If God is perfectly just and loving and good, why would he leave your eternal fate up to factors outside of your control? I mentioned in my last atheism video that I had a cousin whose parents, one was always incarcerated, the other one had severe mental health issues and used to physically abuse him. He was put in foster care. And in foster care, a lot of terrible things happened to him, including rape. He is in prison now because of growing up inside of the system. He never had a chance. Obviously, that's not everybody's story, but that was my cousin's story. Meanwhile, in my own personal life, anecdotally, I had a great life. I grew up in the suburbs. I had a single parent and we were poor, but my mother literally put her entire life on hold to raise me. My mom was in the middle of college when she got pregnant with me. She was incredibly intelligent. She was going to a very good school. She decided to drop everything and raise me. She did eventually go back to college. My mom actually has 2 degrees. Like I said, she's incredibly intelligent. But I got lucky. I didn't get to choose my mom. I didn't get to choose to be born to a person who had the mental capacity and the wherewithal and was absolutely willing to do whatever it took to ensure that her child had a good, stable life. My cousin didn't choose his 2 parents who obviously couldn't get their shit together. I just don't think that's fair. I hate the word blessed. That's my least favorite word. I hate this saying that Christians love to say, God never gives you more than you can handle. Why do they say that? It's demonstrably untrue. God gives plenty of people more than they could handle regularly. What about all the people who die every day? That's clearly God giving them more than they could handle. God gave you smallpox. God never gives you more than you can handle. Oh, you died? God needed another angel, and I guess it was just your time. Oh, you have severe mental health issues and you're thinking about offing yourself? God never gives you more than you could handle. Oh, they committed suicide? Oh, then they're going to hell. Definitely. They just threw God's gift of life right back in his face. God didn't give them more than they could handle. This is just clearly not a system that was designed by any type of deity. I don't know why people think it is. The last anthropological thing that kind of got me into being an atheist actually does have some overlap in science. I honestly didn't even realize how much my disbelief in God was actually created through my love of humans and humanity and people until I played my last video and I realized that all of the reasons that I gave were because of other people. A lot of religious people say that there are certain things in life that they just can't explain. Things like love in things like beauty. And those things can easily be explained away by science. You love your children because of evolution. And I'm going to tell you, as many people in the world as there are, a great majority who absolutely love their children, there are people committing infanticide every single day. There are people putting their children in microwaves. There are people drowning their children in the bathtub. There are people who are committing heinous atrocities. There are people raping and molesting their children. So love for children is not universal. So I don't know why people say things like that. It's got to be cognitive dissonance, because I'm sure you see these stories on the news just like I do. Why are you not taking that into consideration when you say things like, oh, love is the reason how I know God exists? No, love is evolution, honey. You love your children because if you didn't, you would kill them and you wouldn't pass on your genes. And there are plenty of people on this planet who don't love their children. Plenty. Who feel no emotional connection at all to their children. Okay? You love your family because humans are social, tribal creatures, where the tiger invested in claws and teeth and agility and mobility. Humans, sorry, I feel like I have a hair on my nose. Humans went the social route, right? We evolved to become social creatures, very similar to dogs. We evolved to be able to recognize and have facial expressions like smiles so that we know when each other are happy or when each other are angry. We develop love for our tribe. That's why so many of us are tribal. We don't like outsiders. We don't like people who don't conform. That's why I was so lonely growing up, because I was a weird kid and my culture did not like me being weird. I will tell you that. I have a whole video on being called an Oreo, but people don't like people not conforming to the tribe, right? Because conforming to the tribe is social cohesion, and that's what humans have evolved to do. If everybody is a part of the tribe, that means we're all working towards a common goal. We're all building the house together. We're all hunting the animals together. We're all investing in the tribe and the village, right? That's evolution. I was just at the park yesterday and I was walking over a bridge and I heard a babbling brook beneath me, and I looked over and it was beautiful. The water was glinting in the sunlight, and the sounds of the water trickling through the underbrush just sounded so peaceful. And I was like, that's amazing. And a Christian would say, that's God, honey. He created that to be beautiful for you. And in my atheist brain, I was like, no, that's science. I like the sound and sight of this water because water is literally the reason everything on this planet is alive, right? That's the one thing that we look for when we look in exoplanets. We look to see if there's liquid water because every single living thing on this planet needs it to live. You look out at a grassy field and you think, oh my God, that's beautiful. God must have created this grassy field to look beautiful. No, it's because greenery equals life. If there's a grassy field, then there's probably water that grass is living off of. There's probably food that's either growing from the ground or that's eating that grass. That's why you like a grassy field. You like how beautiful the blue sky looks during the day. If the sky is blue and there are clouds, then that means it's not thunderstorming and it's not raining on you. Okay? That means you're safe, right? That's a safe sky. You like the sun and you think the sun is beautiful. Yeah, if the sun wasn't out, you wouldn't get to exist. Once that was explained to me, once the idea that beauty doesn't have to come from God or that love doesn't have to come from God, because I'm like, what about hatred? Oh, hatred is not from God. That's a lack of God. That's really convenient, isn't it? Me hating that bitch that stabbed my couch when I lived in an apartment with 4 other girls. That didn't come from God. Okay. All right. That was me. I made it up, even though he created everything. Okay. Gotcha. Anyway, when I learned that you can scientifically explain away these things that are emotional or intangible, I was just so amazed. Like, science explains away so much. It can explain away paranoia or sadness. A lot of depression is chemicals in your brain. Just how they say seasonal affective disorder is you get sadder in the wintertime because there's less sun and it affects your vitamin D levels. It's very interesting stuff that just seems really boring when you put God in there and say, oh, a guy just designed it to be that way. A lot of people who believe in religion say, if there's no God, then why do we exist? The fact that we're here means there must be a God, but if you weren't here, you wouldn't be here to question whether or not there's a God. You're only here questioning God because there was a system that got you here in the first place, right? You wouldn't, I don't think I'm doing a good job explaining that. I think I'm getting tired. I've set up like a terrible precedent that I have to film my videos at night because of the background that I've chose. Like it has to be dark outside. That's nighttime out there, but it's got to be dark outside in order for me to film these videos. Anyway, but I think that's really it. Essentially, the reason why I didn't religion hop is because I talked myself out of God completely before I could start believing in other religions. I have studied other religions. Currently, my obsession is Mormonism. It's like my favorite cult. It's just so interesting that people believe the Book of Mormon. Like they look at that and they're like, yep, this checks out. I'm always watching videos on why religious people are religious. I think I'm really interested in religious people who were exposed to the same type of information that I'm exposed to, but decided to stay religious anyway. But like I said, ultimately, when I started questioning my faith, based off of humanity, I saw that we were not all getting the same instructions, right? It's if God had commanded me to make a beef Wellington, but I'm seeing other people make like a lasagna and I'm seeing this other person over here char a sea bass. I might be hungry because that sounds delicious. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but this book that you gave me has the recipe for beef Wellington. Why the hell are they making other stuff? I think you gave us different recipes, God. And then I realized that there wasn't a God there and I was talking to myself. Anyway, let me know what your religious experiences are in the comments below, whether you are a religious person or not. I've studied a lot of religions. I was really obsessed with Islam like last year. My God, that was like all I was doing. I didn't like fully read the Quran, but I would read excerpts from the Quran. And I'm just so fascinated by people who have beliefs that are different than mine. It makes me wonder, what are they seeing in this? And why did this convict them? Why did they think that this is the truth? Because I don't want to attack people for their religious beliefs. I used to do that. I just used to be a really militant person. I was a militant liberal. I was a militant vegan. I was a militant atheist. I was all of those things. I would talk shit about you if you were eating a steak in front of me. My whole vibe now is like tact and communication, right? Getting better with communication so we can talk to each other. I'm just like trying to be like chill and let's communicate. Let's talk and share ideas. A lot of people were upset in my last video when I said I had a conservative homie, but I'm like, how the fuck else is he supposed to learn how to be a better person, bitch? He's not gonna learn that shit just talking to conservatives all fucking day. Anyway, also, do I swear too much? I'm trying to decide how much I care about that. Are you here because you like me as a person and that's how I naturally talk? Or is it more important that I get my point across to you successfully? If you click away because you don't like that I say bitch or fuck, should I care about that? And to what extent? I don't know. I'm still figuring that. I was going to say figuring that shit out because that's how I naturally talk. But should I say figuring that stuff out? I don't know. Let me know. I'm very interested to hear what you have to say about this topic. I would say the best way to reach out to me if you want to talk to me, I try to answer a lot of the comments under my videos within that first week. My channel is still pretty small, which right now I think I'm at like 17,000 subscribers. Come on, you guys. I want to be at 20,000, please. Yeah, so in that first week, I try to answer as many comments as I can. So the best way to have any type of discourse with me would be to see my videos as soon as they come out. I know that sounds really gimmicky, but it's really true. And the best way to see them as soon as they come out would be to subscribe to my channel, especially on conversations like this. I really like having conversations about stuff and I like discourse. That's why I have a channel in the first place. So if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. If you dislike it, give me a thumbs down. I love any and all shit. What's the word? You know what I'm talking about, don't you? Whoa, it's just completely gone. That word is just got control, all deleted out of my head. Anyway, But subscribe if you want to see more content from me. I know my content seems like it's all over the place. It's not intentional. The more videos I make and the more you guys comment, the more sense I get for what direction I want my channel to go in. So I would definitely say continue interacting with my channel. Not only does that help the algorithm, but it helps me also as a content creator. So I know what you guys want to hear or want to talk about. So thank you all for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day or night whenever you're watching this, and I will see you next time.